Alright, the question of the day. Ephraim, Manasseh, Levi, and Simeon. Well, let's start with this. Benjamin. He's so-called the tribes of the West Indies. But Manasseh, who are the Cubans, Ephraim, who are the Puerto Ricans, Levi, who are the Haitians, and who else? Simeon, who are the so-called Cubans. They are all in the West Indies. If you look on the map, you check that out. The Lord say he's not the author of confusion. So question of the day for all 12 tribe subscribers. Hey, and all you camp heads, you top dogs, you elders and apostles, won't you break this down, man? Quit hiding. How do you decipher those tribes, those 5 tribes, if they all in the same region that you claim belong to only one tribe or be dominated by one tribe? Question of the day, man. Shalom.
Shalom. All praises due Yahweh Shemel Shai. Double honor to the head apostles of GMS that rule well. And shalom to the brothers on the highways and byways doing the work sincerely and diligently. Welcome to GMS Fast Food. So we have a question of the day, and I'm just gonna get right into it, man. You know, people make this thing harder than what it is, or they try to stump people for something that's really not that difficult, man. Alright, so his question was, how do we differentiate or decipher the difference between those people, our people on those islands? Well, first and foremost, we're going to start with Genesis 49:1. And Jacob called unto his sons, and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Alright, so the Lord, put it out through Jacob what was going to happen to his seed in these last days. And we are now in these last days, so there's no doubt, and there's no confusion, and there's no disagreement that these people in these islands are Israelites. Okay? So, when you continue to read on Genesis 49 chapter, speaking about how to decipher who's who, it gives you a little breakdown of what these people are going to be like, or their attributes in these last days. You know, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, that's Levi and Simeon, instruments of cruelty in their hands, and we know what type of practices they practice. For example, Puerto Rico, it said that Ephraim was going to bring his son to the murderer, so on and so forth, a cake not turned, and that murder was what? United States of America. And Cuba. Now I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this. Now Manasseh, which means he is to forget or something like that. Now I'm gonna hit you with this real quick. Now since this truth been brought out, Cuba pretty much has been exiled. They had no bearing on anything, man. It was just pretty much forgotten about. And it says here, Obama opens the doors to Cuba after 56 years. Now, someone may want to object to that, which is fine. But at the end of the day, you know what? If you have to open the door to somebody after 56 years, that means what? You was forgotten about. You was missing. So I kind of go down that road with the Cubans. That's just me speaking as a man, but that's the route I go down. But at the end of the day, going back to now, the crux of this whole question of the day is about the island of Jamaica. Now, when you go to the 12 tribe sign and you see Benjamin, and we titled it West Indians, so the problem lies in where the fact that Ephraim, Manasseh, Levi, Simeon are all in, as they tell you, the West Indies. Okay, so now the question, how do you differentiate? Well, first and foremost, the Lord pretty much put a distinction between all these people in those islands. Okay, there's a distinction between all these people. Now, to give you understanding concerning what is talking about when we speak of the West Indies. Alright, so we have the East Indies and we have the West Indies. Now there's a thing of geographic location, East and West. Here you have the East over here, and here you have the West over here. So therefore, when it's spoken of the West, it's because it's in the western part of the world. Alright? Now, when you get into this word Indies, now that word Indie, it says here it's a plural noun, Indies, and it gives you a brief group of words that's related to Indies. But when you go to the origin, independent, indie, okay, first use reference to the film producer, abbreviation of independent. So this word indie is associated with what? Independent. Independent. So when you go to independent and look up the definition of independent, free from outside control, not depending on others' authority, to study is total independence. Gives you a couple examples. Not depending on another for livelihood or substance. Now, going back to the West Indies, contrary to what you may believe or what you have been told, these islands are in the West Indies. Okay? These islands make up the Indies. And the Indies happen to be in the West. And the reason why it was differentiated by the West, because there were already Indies off the coast of East Asia. Okay? These islands were known as the Indies. So now the distinction is East Indies and West Indies. Okay? So now when one says that these islands are in the West Indies, which is incorrect, these islands are where? They're actually in the Caribbean Sea. These islands are here located in the Caribbean Sea. And you have the greater islands, which the majority of which we focus on: Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and Cuba. Okay? So understand, with all thy gettings, get understanding. So now, going back once again to the crux of this whole question of the day. Now, the problem lies is this. Here's where the problem lies for some people. Their concern is, wait a minute, if all these islands are in the West Indies, which they're not, they're in the Caribbean, but they're known as independent islands in the West. If all these islands are in the West Indies as they tell you, then how can this be? How can Benjamin be titled West Indies? Listen, man, you're straining at a gnat. It's not that difficult, man. At the end of the day, regardless, all these people here are Israelites. Okay? These are all Israelites that the Lord said this in Isaiah 11:11. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Okay? So whether or not Benjamin has, or Jamaica has, the title West Indies is pretty irrelevant, man. Because it's about the people. Not about the place. It's about the people. Okay? Now, the people happen to be in these locations. And if you really get down to it, now that you have the understanding of the Indies, they're independent islands, can you label Jamaica as West Indie? Absolutely. Why? Because it's an independent island. That term Indie simply is short for independent. And all these islands are independent, man. Now, I'm gonna give you a quick example. Okay? Because they're all Israelites, regardless if Jamaica was known as West Indies or Caribbean. They're all Israelites. Now, I googled and typed in, what was the Northern Kingdom called? The Northern Kingdom continued to be called the Kingdom of Israel, or Israel, while the Southern Kingdom was called the Kingdom of Judah. So the question is this: because the Southern Kingdom was called Judah, are they not now Israelites? Are they not known as Israel or the Prince of Power? But the label went on the Northern Kingdom as Israel. But they're still Israelites. They're still gathered together under Yasher Allah. the name Prince of Power. Just because the Northern Kingdom got the term Israel, that doesn't make the Southern Kingdom extinct from being Israelites. Just like when we go back to Jamaica, just because the Lord gave High Priest Ariah the breakdown and the revelation of the 12 tribes sign, and he termed Jamaica the West Indies, that doesn't mean that these aren't all Israelites. Of course they are. Just because that specific title is on this, it was put on this island, it doesn't make it any greater or any less of value, man. Because at the end of the day, he said what? He's gonna come and deliver his people from the islands of the sea. And that's another thing you gotta understand. When the Lord gave that man High Priest Ariah the breakdown, there was no contention. It was well received, man, and it's still well received. But now, being spiritually heightened now, education wise or spiritual wise, we know when we go out to the highways and byways, if someone comes up and says, "Wait a minute, the island of Jamaica is in the West Indies," we can say you're exactly right. But these islands make up the Indies, so it ain't too hard to understand. It ain't too hard to break down, man. Yeah, they're all in the Caribbean Sea. They're not in the West Indies. They make up the Indies. They make up the Indies, which are in the West, but they're in the Caribbean Sea. So all these islands are in the Caribbean. Okay? So when you go to break this thing down, you're going to get resistance. You're going to get people that are non-believers, and the reason why you get people that are non-believers and you get questions like this is because when the Lord blows that candle out and he takes that spirit away from you, everything about these scriptures become questionable now. Everything has to be questioned. Everything has to, wait a minute, Jamaica, that's in the West Indies like all the other islands, so how can that be? How can Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Jamaica's a head island? Come on, man. At the end of the day, this place, America's going to be destroyed. The Lord's going to deliver his elect from these locations, and that's the way this thing's going to fall, man. That's exactly how this thing's going to break down. Okay? So, there's not really much more to get into. It's fairly simple. You can strain at a gnat if you really want to get down and dirty and try to figure out why. But this is what you tell people when you come out there. Regardless if we had named, if High Priest Ariah had called Jamaica West Caribbean or West Indies or Jamaica, people are still going to have a problem with it, man. But when you get spiritual understanding, you can see through it and you can break it down so people can understand. When you're out there doing the work, you tell somebody, listen, they're all in the Caribbean Sea, but they all comprise of independent islands, which that word Indie stands for, in the North Atlantic. Alright, so with that, I just wanted to make it quick and right to the point. If brothers want to elaborate on it, once again, it was just for edification purposes. But with that, I give all praise due to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai for giving me the spirit and power and courage to come out and do the will and to fulfill the will and do the work. Shalom to the head apostles of GMS that rule well, and shalom to you brothers in the highways and byways also fighting that good fight of faith. So with that, we say shalom.